Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual opening for here, the brand new art exhibition up at the Meek Arts Center, featuring three very talented artists who are with us here this evening for a live chat about their extraordinary artwork. My name is Stephen Snyder. I am the Gallery and Communications Coordinator for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council. And we are so thrilled to be able to present this exhibition and so happy to get artwork back up on the walls of the Meek. It's a wonderful facility and we truly appreciate their partnership in creating another space here on the North Shore for artists to exhibit their artwork. And we are, of course, grateful to be on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Squamish Nation, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and the Musqueam Nation. And as guests, we have such immense gratitude for their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. And this land and where we are and moments in time and connections with other people and places are kind of themes present in all of the artworks in this exhibition here, which is running now. Today's the first day that it's open. So it's running from now until April the 10th at the Meek, which is at 1700 Mathers Avenue up in West Vancouver. And you can view it Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And anytime you go see a show or a concert up at the Meek, you can take a look at the lobbies and see all of these amazing works of art on the walls there. A little bit of housekeeping tonight. If you have any questions or comments for our amazing artists, you can drop those in the chat and we will get to those kind of near the end of the evening. So this exhibition features three great artists: photographer Vincent Chan, watercolor painter Tim Bennison, and multimedia painter Danvic Briones. And all of their work, as I said earlier, captures kind of an idea or an essence of here, whether that be playing with notions of time or sense of place or community. So all of their work really invites you to really focus on the moment and be in the here and the now of their artwork. And we're going to hear a lot more about that as we get to talk to them, which let's do that right now. Let's introduce our amazing artists. Let's start off with Vincent. Vincent, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
All right. Thanks for starting off with me. It's horrible. Thank you. First of all, it's an honor to have my work showcased at the Meek Center, and what's even more honoring to me is that I get to share this platform with these two great artists over here. You know, Danvic and Tim. I mean, you know, looking at their stuff yesterday just blew my mind. I started. Anybody who's might have seen my website might have seen a photograph of this little Chinese kid with a 3 years old and with a little camera in front of his face, and that was me. So I've been a pro ever since I was 3 years old. So you can't beat that, right? How I got started in photography was, I've always enjoyed creating, art and in particular, I enjoyed pencil drawing and painting, but I was never very good at that. I mean, I was probably about 10, 11, 12 years old, and I belonged to this little group of 4 or 5 little boys, and they were fantastic artists. They drew murals for the school, and they influenced me and tried to encourage me to draw better. And I wasn't bad, but I wasn't as good as they were. And lo and behold, in our grade 7 year, our science teacher, he decided that he was going to teach the class how to make your own little pinhole cameras and develop your film and make contact prints all in the daylight. And I was just hooked right there and then. And so I I fell in love with photography, the science of photography, creating images that came out of my head and capturing all these images. I've been a photographer for over 35 years, and one of my greatest loves is to shoot classic portraiture, black and white portraiture. My influences are the great Canadian photographer Yusuf Karsh. He was always somebody that I aspired to be like. George Hurrell, he was this Hollywood photographer who really knew how to capture the essence of a person on film with that one shot. Same with Karsh. These are the guys that knew how to pull out the essence of a person in like I said, in that one shot. And that's what I had always aspired to do. And I do that now. In terms of the exhibition, this was something that I didn't actually plan on having, because I never thought of myself as an artist, I suppose, not like Tim and Danvic. But look at them smiling away there. Yeah. But I had this opportunity to go to China, and having landed in China and driving to my mother's village, I realized that this soil, this ground is where my heart and soul started from. And so instead of just taking snapshots of the people and whatever, I decided to get really involved in learning about this culture that I've been missing, and learn about the people of this country and this village, and really try to get to know them by taking these pictures of them, and not knowing that these pictures are going to become something that was classified exhibition class, so this is how this session of my photography started. And I think that's all I should say for now, because I would like everyone to just actually come down and check out our art. Yeah, you're muted there.
Thank you so much, Vincent. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Great to hear everyone's origin, even from a young age, being interested in the arts. That's great. Danvic, let's throw it over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank this opportunity to be a part of this wonderful group exhibition. It is really a privilege for me to be with this talented people here. Well, for me, I think I started to draw when I was 6 years old. For some reason, I was copying this elephant that my uncle drew, and then I was surprised that I actually copied it the way it looked like. In fact, I still memorized the elephant, how it looked like right now. So from there, I decided, or I felt that, oh, drawing is nice. So since I studied, I think from grade 1 to 4th year, all of my notebooks and my books they all have doodles. I would, I always doodle, and at the same time, in my high school, I was inspired by Salvador Dali, with the idea of the dream in the subconscious. And because of that, at first I developed working with pastels, oil pastels, because I think that's, for some reason, that's a beginner crayon, crayon and then oil pastels. And then I represented our school in terms of art competitions in high school. So college, my major was painting. So again, it all went to the art. So my bachelor's is, I'm Bachelor of Fine Arts, major in painting. And from there, it developed from, doing oil painting. And then I got an interest with printmaking. So basically, I got so fascinated doing lino cuts, rubber cuts, and all calligraphy. And what I did is I have mixed printmaking with traditional painting, because in my head, I've been working hard with the plate that you use for print, and you just throw it away after a couple of editions. So I said, I don't want to throw this one. I'd rather make this one the artwork itself. So the evolution of my work as carving started from there, but it's still in its raw stage. When I graduated, of course, fine arts would not feed me. So I worked in a television station. I worked in an advertising company. So during that time, my bread and butter is advertising. So graphic design and all that. I've opened up my own graphic design studio. And on the side, when I get invited to exhibit, then I paint, but it's more on the side. And then after a couple of years, I migrated to Canada. And so the very first thing for me to actually explore my surroundings is I painted, I think 10 small works of my impression of Canada. And so I was given the opportunity to present that in a community center. They told me that they might not see it, or because it's in an obscure way of putting the works. I said, it doesn't matter as long as I put my foot on the door, it's all good. I mean, even if I would exhibit on the sidewalk, it's fine. It's it's something that I just should want to do as part of being an artist. So it's for me, it was a blessing in disguise migrating here, because suddenly I developed more of the works that I had. And at the same time, also, again, having a day job, of course, to support that. But it is now more, not really on equal terms, but I'm putting more in effort in my art. So if back home, in the Philippines, I only do 10% of that. In fine art now, it's around 60%. I'm sorry, 40%. So, when I go home, I paint, I do a lot of works and all that stuff. So it has become a passion. So, and it continually evolves. And that's why, for example, in the works that we're doing right now, the idea of time as a personal subjective thing in terms of how you manage time, not in its physical, but in its mental state, is one of the things that has inspired me in doing the works. And what is present is what is here. So, time is always present, time is always here. So that's basically, I mean, in the works that I do, I always present memory in the works that I do. And up to this point, I still love to combine carving with traditional painting or artwork. So, and I guess that's as of the moment. That's all. That's all for now. So thank you very much for the time that you've given us or given me.
That's great. Thank you, Danvic. That was wonderful. Again, to hear from such a young age, just having to create, and the fact that everyone here has been able to make some kind of a profession or career out of their creative passion is very inspiring, because that doesn't always happen. So it's really wonderful to hear and see. All right, so Tim, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Well, I wanted to thank the West Van Arts Council and you, Stephen, for letting us do this. It's just a great opportunity. I've been looking forward to this for 2 years. When I dropped the art off yesterday for the installation, I was struck by how well you've selected us three. We were talking amongst ourselves. Just an amazing combination of completely different media, different approaches, but it all works well together. So I encourage everyone to come down to the K-Meek and see it. So thank you, Stephen. And then, talking to you two guys, Danvic and Vincent, about your processes and your inspiration and where you're coming from with what you're showing, it was just fascinating. art can be very solo and individual. So it's wonderful to get out there and talk with artists and other creators and communicate. I wish we had more opportunity to do that. And it's been really bad in the last 2 years, obviously, for that. But so it's very refreshing. But yeah, I'm another example of started at a young age, couldn't stop me drawing pictures. I have a weird brain though, because I would say I'm quite artistic, but I'm also very, very technical. So my day job is I'm actually in video games and film special effects. And I have a degree in computer science and mathematics. And that put the food on the table for a number of years. And I worked on a number of video games, a number of movies. My passion, which I got to live, was using computers to make pictures. I just love that. You just can't stop me. But I've always worked in traditional media too. I had a great high school teacher who introduced me to watercolors back in high school. And I've been fascinated by that medium for 40 years. I've been doing watercolors, and I continue to learn. It's amazing. The medium is so difficult and so frustrating, but it's so rewarding, and you can do some unique things in it. So I'm still doing it. Yeah, I've painted a lot. Most of my career was like technical, but I always painted on the side. I actually retired about 3 or 4 years ago and went full time trying to make it as a fine artist here in North Van. And I was in quite a few exhibitions and did a lot. My output went way up for a couple of years. But then I got the calling. I got called back into the video game world. So now I'm unretired now and I'm working, but I still do a lot of painting, and I love exhibitions. With watercolors, I just feel that it's unique in the painting media, I think, because you have to let the water do its thing. You can't fight it. And the charm of a watercolor, the power of a watercolor, is a kind of melding of what the water did with the paint and how it interacted in all sorts of mysterious ways, both chemically and gravity and diffusion, and the interaction between the paper and the pigments and the different brands of pigment, the actual tubes of paint, your brushes, of course, all of that kind of randomness, but with some control, some direction from the artist, some layer of human control. That's what I try to achieve, that balance in what I paint. And I find that if I go too far one way, it becomes just blobs, and it might as well be abstract. Nothing wrong with abstracts. I'm more of a representational painter. But if I go too far the other way, which happens a lot, too fiddly, too controlled, you lose the charm, and you don't get a good result. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to do that. One thing that I've tried to do in this exhibit, in the paintings that I'm showing in this one, is scale. One of the things you'll notice if you come down is they're large. For watercolors, they're on par with the size you might see of an acrylic or an oil canvas, which you don't usually see with watercolors. Watercolors are usually about so big, right? Because of the technique itself, it has limitations. But I figured out ways to deal with that, and my idea was to try and create larger works that have the impact that you have with a large acrylic or a large oil, on the wall. It has this impact. It fills your peripheral vision when you're looking at it, and it becomes a world. I want to get that feeling, but with the watercolor medium. So many of the paintings that I put in are like that. The other thing, though, the here theme, I think it's pretty appropriate, because most of my painting in the last few years has been of the North Shore. Like, I live in North Van. I've also lived in West Van. And I think there's not enough painting going on by artists of this area, this particular area. There's a lot of interesting confluences between industry and obviously amazing nature and people. And so I often try to put that in my landscapes. A lot of them are landscapes. I do portraiture too, but whenever I do a landscape, I always try to put a human story, either directly there's humans in the landscape, or there's obvious evidence of humans in the landscape. And it becomes, so that idea of here I guess, is about, where we all live and the people in it, like combined together. And so, yeah. So anyway, thank you again. I hope you enjoy what the exhibit, and I'll turn it back to you, Stephen.
That's great. Thanks so much, Tim. That was nice and insightful. Thank you guys so much for sharing a bit of your background and your process and your inspirations with us. That's a lot to think about and chew on so far. I'm just gonna read a couple quick comments. Some really great ones already coming in. What's up, Pat? Says, looking forward to seeing the works of these guys. Also later he says, great to hear your story, Vincent. And we have Esme Gayo McLaren Art says, hello, I'm so excited to see the artworks and hear from these artists. Aquaholic 444 says, looking forward to this one. There's some great names in here. Aquaholic, I like that. Also, yeah, they also say such a beautiful story and career. Yeah, so anyone, if you have anything to say to these wonderful artists, you have any questions about their work, drop them in the chat and we'll get to them throughout the night. So next we're going to take a quick little tour of the exhibition, just a little tease to whet your appetites. You'll go see it in person. And as mentioned, I can't remember who said it, but they said it's taken a while for the show to get going. We had this juried, I believe, for 2020, and then everything happened. You all know what happened. So we weren't able to show, which is a real shame. But now it's up. After about 2 years, it's ready for the public to see, and we'll take a quick view of it right now. Yes, it says you come into the Meek on the main floor of the Grosvenor Theatre lobby. So we start off with some work by Danvic, and this is a really neat piece. This is actually a table. We had it propped up here this evening because the Meek is just getting ready to host part of the Mountain Film Festival. So they had to make some room for some of the tables and stuff. But it's really neat. Danvic has, as he mentioned, carved into the wood and painted on it. It's very, very cool. So aside from the tables, there are also wonderful pieces such as this. And artists, if you want to jump in at any moment, say a few quick little seconds, feel free. Yeah, and then move on to Vincent's stunning black and white photography. Yeah, they're really quite wonderful pieces. There's a lot happening in them. And Vincent has left these great little stories, little tiny stories about each photograph beside it. So when you come in and see it, you can read a little bit more about the work. Yeah, and then move on to Tim's brilliant watercolors. These two shots, anyone here on the North Shore or who's taken a ferry will recognize, the Bone Island and Horseshoe Bay. Yeah, this great documentation of some climate protests in 2019 there. Yeah, and another great scene from Tim, that marriage of nature and industry here on the North Shore. And then when you come downstairs to the McEwen Theatre lobby, we've got more work by all of our artists. And then in this wall right by the stairs, we've got more pieces from Tim. you can kind of see in comparison from the previous piece to this one, that scale that Tim was talking about. Seeing things that are a little bit more of a standard size, but then you see that compared to some of these massive pieces. It's pretty astonishing.
Yeah, this one's the largest one. It's about 4x6, well, 3x5 framed, and it's just an urban scene in North Van that we drive by every day. But I wanted it to, have a bit of more of an impact than a typical watercolor.
Yeah,
it's nice to see them.
You had to be able to step back. Yeah, and then we get some more stunning photographs from Vincent here. With these wonderful individuals, so full of character and stories of their own. I gotta say, I love this kid's style.
Yeah, he's a smartly dressed kid.
And then we get some more amazing work here from Danvic. These beautiful bold colors. And you can see on some of these pieces, there's a kinetic aspect to them. There's sort of like clock hands.
Well, yeah, that's just to show that time is movement. So basically, it represents movement and time. So
yeah,
that's fantastic, Danvic. That's out of sight.
Yeah, no, totally. Really, really great work, everyone. They're so diverse in media and sort of tone and color and shape and size and scale. But there really is a really wonderful through line that you can feel through all of them. There's a real focus. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about some focus. Each of the artists is going to tell us a little bit about one of their pieces, sort of give you a bit of a sense of kind of their sort of statement about the bodies of work that they are showing. So I think let's start with Tim this time. I'm going to pull up a painting from Tim's, and he is going to tell us a bit about it.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Stephen. This one's called Carameus Orchard, and it's based on a series of reference photos that I took on a family trip a couple of years ago. We always go every August to a Soyuz, and we come back through Carameus, which has, the fruit stands. And for those of you who aren't from BC, like that's one of the hottest parts of the province. It was about 40 degrees Celsius this day, and I wanted to capture the feeling of heat that was just coming off this car. It was just almost unbearable. But what's kind of interesting about this is it kind of shows a bit of my technique. Watercolors is a very unforgiving medium, and if you can imagine, all of the white that you see in this picture was planned beforehand and is the paper showing through. And so when you do a watercolor like this, it's not just enough to have an idea for a subject and a feel you're trying to convey, but a plan of attack, like a construction plan, if you will, of how you're going to make this painting, because there's only certain things you can do in watercolors in certain orders that are going to actually work out. So the idea here was to use something called masking fluid, which many artists actually don't like, but I enjoy using it because it allows you to think ahead of and save the areas that are going to be white, even if they're very intricate, as they are in this case. And then you can go to town with what I call underpainting. where you can literally wet the whole paper and chuck. I literally used pictures of color thrown on like Jackson Pollock onto this underpainting of this painting. And I've had it staple gun to a plywood board, and I just move the board around and let gravity do its thing and let all the colors intermingle. And you let that dry, and you end up with this crazy underpainting that has all these happy accidents. I mean, it should be Bob Ross, I guess, that you use to construct the painting that you weren't planning ahead of time. And then you go in and do your detail with your brush. And, that's how you get the dark shadows and all of that and the details. But when you take the masking fluid off at the end, you're left with the whites, and you're left with a fairly complex picture that's got some, representational quality to it, but it also has a bit of an abstract feel, and it has a unified color feel to it too. You can see evidence of the underpainting if you look to the right of the car. There's this kind of wooden structure which was catching the fruit from the tree. There's a bottom slat of it that's kind of the red color of the car. That's an accident of the underpainting, where the red, rusty red of the car flowed outside of the boundaries of where I initially wanted it, and I just left it. And I just left it in and worked with it. And there's many other examples of that in this painting. But the overall effect was, I was pretty happy with it. I didn't know where it was going, really, when I was doing it. I didn't know if it was going to turn out, which is a common thing with watercolors. You often don't know if it's going to work out, and you end up throwing out 3/4 of your paintings, which I do regularly. But this one sort of snapped and turned out when I looked at it. I've exhibited in Granville Island in the Federation of Canadian Artists Gallery in their they had a Scenes of Western Canada exhibition, and this one got a mention in that one, and it's also been in a few watercolor magazines as well. So I was pretty happy with the way it turned out, because it captured overall that feel of being there 40 degrees and not knowing where, wanting to go run back to the car basically for the air conditioning. So that's the story behind this painting.
Yeah, that you can definitely feel the heat. I've been in one of these orchards, and I totally feel it, Tim. That's great, and thank you for explaining about the underpainting and using pictures to paint with a watercolor. I've never heard anything like that before. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's called pouring. People call it pouring. You mix the paint up with water in little stainless steel pitchers, and you pour it on the paper and then move it around with gravity. So you try to not touch the paper with a brush until the very last possible moment. It's just all the pouring that you use.
Tim, do you have a table that might be sitting on a rocker of some sort that you can maneuver the paint around at all? Anything like that?
No, I have a 4x8 sheet of plywood on between two sawhorse type things, right. And I just pick it up and I move it around, right? Like it doesn't need to be held in any one place for very long. You get the effect, and then you quickly put it down. Sometimes I'll even lock it in with a hairdryer. Like when I like the way random pools of paint have intersected and melded, I will not let chance come into play, and I'll hair dry it and dry it within like a minute, and then I've got the effect I want, right? So
oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
It's very nice. Are you actually using a very heavy paper? Because if you, my experience with watercolor or paper is, if there's too much water, it crumples or it waves. So I guess that's a special paper if you actually pour water and it doesn't even have that kind of waviness or the crumpling of the paper. So that's
there's a secret to that. It is heavy paper. It's 300 grams, or it's even 300-pound paper is even more heavyweight. But what you do is you stretch it, which means you put it in. I put it in a bathtub, and I let it soak for 10 minutes, so it's soaked before I start. And I put it on a piece of plywood, and then I staple gun it to the plywood, and then around the edges. And then when it dries, it shrinks and it's tight as a drum.
Mhm.
And then when I paint, it never really warps during the painting process. And certainly every time each layer of paint dries, it dries completely flat and tight again. So that's the secret for doing large watercolors. You have to stretch it. And with big ones, you need to use a staple gun on wood, because sometimes people use masking tape. It doesn't work for large paintings because the force of the paper shrinking is so powerful.
Amazing.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much. Great questions, Danvic and Vincent. Let's move on to Danvic. Let's see one of your works here. Okay, yeah, please tell us about this amazing piece.
Yeah, so during COVID, there was a lot of Netflix time moment. So then I just wondered about, for some reason, I trivialized time. What is time? Because, we had so much time. So I researched on it, and I find that time is always subjective, and you measure it on different ways. And for this particular work, it's about how nature works in time. So the title is Leaf Cycle, but the spelling of cycle is P-S-Y-C-H-L-E. So even in that, even with the idea of how nature works in time, that's how we also work with seasons. That's why in the before the invention of the timepiece, people would look at seasons and how they would predict time, or they would measure time. So this is how I wanted the work to show. So the idea of the greening to the browning to the yellowing, but even for seasons, even for trees, each and every leaf has its own time of turning brown or turning green. So it's not always the same time. So even as a tree, each and every part of the tree has their own time of working on that. So this is also what I wanted to depict in the work, so that the idea of even for not even for humans, but even for nature, time is very personal, meaning it's your own time. So and this is one of the depictions of the work. So this is basically the way how we use nature to sense time. And for me to show how that time works is I actually put a clock. But I made it to camouflage it so that because normally when time passes, you don't really see it unless you actually want to be specific about it. So if you're late, if you're angry, if that particular thing, otherwise time just passes without you knowing it. So it's the same thing with that. But if you focus on it, you'll see that there is movement in that. So time is equated with movement. So if movement stops, even to the thought movement, then time stops. That's why sometimes, when your mind stops, then how can you know that, you are alive, or in that sense, how does time moves in that way? So the way I carve it in the different lines where, the different directions, if you actually focus on one, you just follow a certain line, then again, time also moves in that way. So it's more of a representation of, and I no matter how I wanted to go on the abstract, for some reason, I'm still pulled in by representation. So if you look at my works, an attempt to abstraction always goes to representation. So that's the idea of that. So, but yeah, in that essence, so basically you can use it. It can be functional. You can actually use it as a clock or a time, a wall clock if you want to. But it's just a representation. It doesn't have to be the right time. It's just the idea of movement. That's what I want to represent in the work, which in the other works you will also see, except for the one on the table, because literally that means timetable. So it's called timetable in its literal sense. But yeah, these are one of the works that, I've what do you call this, dissected on how we look at time in those in the 4 pieces that I put there. So yeah, I guess that's about the work. And yeah, I mean the idea of me using the plate as the actual work also shows that in the carving and in the colors that I use. So thank you very much for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danda, for sharing. That was really great to hear how that idea of movement and how just like physical movement and how that relates to our concept of time moving and that personal each person and plant and animals sense of time and what it means to them. It's a really neat idea to explore. And just all of these intricate carvings and lines, like you mentioned, you can just follow them around and just get lost in your pieces. It's pretty great.
How long did it take you to do this, Danvic?
This one, I think it took me like 5 days or 6 days. It's because of the process. It's the waiting time, it's the drying time that really makes it long. And but yeah, it's the actual paint is fast because the underlying paint is acrylic.
Mm-hmm.
But when I use the oil and it's a lot of oil paint, then that really, and then varnish and all that makes it a little bit longer because of the process. Yeah, around 5 days.
That's terrific. They have this thing called the barber clock, which runs backwards. So maybe you can do something like that in the future where time goes backwards or something. Oh. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's like Benjamin Button, huh? Yeah, I mean that's a nice. It's a nice concept.
Yeah,
I really like your work, Danvic. It's I'm a sucker for complexity, and all the lines and the fact that they're carved and it's 3D when you see them in real life, really attracts the eye. But yet, like you veer obviously heavily towards the abstraction, but you see after a while you see the representational stuff in all of the pieces, right? Even it was funny, even the one when I saw it in the video, I noticed the one with the faces. I didn't get that in real life, but it became more obvious when you showed the video of it, Stephen. And I was like, wow, that is so cool, because the way that the mosaic complex quality resolves into faces it takes you a little while to get it, but it adds more than just a straightforward representational picture would, right?
It was really well hidden.
Like a puzzle.
Yes, but just watching it on the video, I immediately saw it, and I wished I had actually gone to touch that one. Remember yesterday I was touching your prints? That one would have been really interesting. And the tactile feel of your work is incredible. It's because it's so fine, and yet there's nothing that wasn't meant to be. I can see that you were quite literal about everything you did.
Thank you.
That's great. So next up, Vincent, we're going to take a look at one of your amazing photographs. Yes, please take it away.
Right on. Well, if you're looking at this image, so whenever I photograph people, I try not to use a really long lens or anything like that. I prefer to be as close as I can to the person, and this way, you're connecting with them, and you're not actually swiping an image or anything like that from them. Not stealing an image from somebody 2 miles away or whatever. And as I was just composing this image, he was just there, and I felt that I was creating an image around him, and whenever I photograph somebody, it's a bit of a study of that person. And yet when I look at this photograph at the end of the process, I realized that in fact, he was studying me. And, you know, just by looking at his eyes, I can tell he was wondering, who is this guy photographing me? You know, who does he think he is? Or, you know, well, where is he from? And, you know, but this is what I like about photography, because everybody's slightly different. Every character, every personage is different, and everyone reacts differently in front of the camera. And so with this guy, what's unique about it is that I was trying to find out really what he was doing without actually asking him. And I realized that, you know, he had a water pipe in his hand. It's one of those homemade water pipes. I don't know if you know what a water pipe is, but there's a little basin in that little white plastic area where there's water in there, and then you put the tobacco, which is on a tube, and the smoke goes through the water and up through the bamboo, so that there are no impurities, but just the smoke that comes out. And so, you know, this is the story that I was trying to tell of this guy. And he's sitting in front of the store. And later on, I discovered that there's Chinese words on the side there said for rent. So it's kind of neat that he's sitting in front of a abandoned storefront, and it's like he's just there enjoying the sun, and there's this crazy sign that says for rent, and I'm thinking, you know, how neat can you get, you know? So yeah, that's all I can really say about this image. It's really one of my favorites. Hope it's one of yours.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a standout piece, Vincent. Thank you so much for all of the insight and sharing that little bit about your relationship with the camera and the subject, and then the subject's relationship sometimes with the photographer. That's something interesting to think about. I don't know if everyone who just looks at photography thinks about that relationship.
No, there definitely has to be a relationship. Otherwise, there's no give and take, and then there's just no emotion behind it, you know. And so when I say that I usually shoot with a shorter lens, I'm up close and I can actually talk to the person without raising my voice. And there's some other images that haven't been shown in here that really captures the true emotional side of some of the people there. And I felt that I was really getting connected with these people, because I had this feeling that I am part of this community, you know, in some way. Anyways.
What I like about your photography, like your heroes that you mentioned, is you're a master of values. We talked about this yesterday. By values, I mean like the lights and the darks, right? So you use the values to guide the eye around. And this picture is a classic example of that, right? You know where to look and it feels right. Obviously, the guy's white shirt draws you to the main subject, but then you've got the secondary white area where the characters are, and then you've got the dark chairs that balance it, right? And you're just really a master of that. Everyone who comes down will see all the pictures have this amazing sense of values. I think of your paintings like your photos like a painter, obviously, because that's what I am. But I can't help but think that way when I look at your photographs, which is not that common for photographs, I think.
Well, you know, no photograph is done until you actually work on it. I look at photographs like paintings, you know. I go back to those days when everyone hired painters to capture their portraits, and you know, if you were paying somebody to paint your portrait and you had some weird stuff on your face, you wouldn't want them to paint those things in there too, right? You want to take care of them and get them out of there. And so a lot of times when I work on photographs, I don't believe a photograph is done until you've actually done some post-production on it. So like your painting, like Danvic's carvings and paintings, I mean, it's all work on it.
Mhm.
And once you've done what you can do to highlight your subject matter, and you step back and you let your friends like yourselves look at it, then you know that you can step away from it and call it done.
Yeah, I really like from the darkest to the lightest, the darkest dark to the lightest light. It's the chiaroscuro, the contrast of that. It's really yeah, it's so alive. And I think I want to sit down with the guy with that cushion there, because the look of that content and curiosity is like, I want to see what he sees, you know, and sitting down on that. It invites you in that certain way, you know. That's the thing about them. That's why even your other photograph, where I think is it Paigao or
The Chinese chess.
Yeah, that's my favorite. It's a very intense photograph. You can feel that you know, that I think he really wants to win.
Yes, I think all of our work here, you know, I think has captured the emotions. Because if once you do a painting or a photograph, and if there's no emotion behind it, then there must be something lost there. You know, it's just paint, or it's just a snapshot. I don't know. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I always try to figure out when I'm choosing a subject and figuring out a plan, what is the end emotion? You know, just like for a film or a story or a, you know, a photograph, is what is the end emotion you want to elicit off the viewer? And everything has to serve that, right? And
right.
And ones the works that are the most successful have the most harmony between a clear goal in terms of emotions, and then the execution, all the supporting elements of the medium, whatever it is, to go towards supporting that. Those are the most affecting works. And emotions don't have to be always happy. They can be intense, like your guy playing chess there, or I have one that's pretty disturbing. If you go down and look at it in the exhibit, it's got a lot of symbolism in, and it has a message. But I have another one of a kid feeding a bird up on Whistler slopes, you know, and with an expression of joy, right? And so that was the whole purpose for that painting, is to get this feeling of joy of being there, right? And so everything about it builds up to that. But yeah, I do think an emotional goal in a photograph or an abstract work or a representational painting is the key, right?
Right, and the emotion has to come from you as a creator, and as myself as a photographer. I have to be able to capture the emotion as well, and then having to have it all printed out so that that emotion will translate to the viewer next. And so whether the emotions are all similar or not, doesn't really matter, as long as there is something sparked in there between the creator and in my case, the person in the photo and the viewer, you know?
Yeah, it all has to come together. You're right. The viewer is the active participant in the process too.
Right.
I mean, I think every medium, visual medium, has a similar thing. I mean, video games do. We even, believe it or not, in video games we have emotional pillars that we construct at the beginning of a project, and we try to make the whole production at the end of the day, when it's in the player's hands, elicit those emotions. And I know that you know, even for abstracts, it's the same thing. It's trying, and sometimes the abstracts are pure emotion. Like it's literally, that's what it is. It's about the emotion in a very visceral and raw base sense, you know. So yeah, the viewer is part of it. Like,
Right.
to round the comment, yeah.
Back to you, Steve.
Speaking of viewers, everybody watching, have a couple more things to say to you all. Let's see. Oh, so Leonard Chan says, "Congrats, Vincent. We've been looking forward to this ever since it got postponed." So that's great to hear. And Esme, who's
No relation, by the way.
Pardon?
No relation, by the way.
Oh. And Esme, who we read a couple of other lines from before, chimes in again, says, "Loved hearing the artist's background and inspirations." What's up, Pat says, "Beautiful carved and painted pieces, Danvic." Again, this amazing Aquaholic 444, love that name, says the photos convey so much. Jennifer Kapala says, "Just beautiful, Vincent," with like 4 exclamation points. Pat again, "Great pieces, Vincent. Love your work." We've got some claps and some hand raises. And there's a bit of a question here from What's Up Pat. Says, "Lovely pieces, Tim. The detail on the eagle and the snowboarder, is that all in watercolor?"
Yes, 100%. The technique there was about, again, the use of masking and overpainting and underpainting all combined together in different layers. It wasn't that one, those parts of it were not just random splashes, right? So yeah.
Excellent, cool. And Esme Gayo McLaren Art says, "Tim, I feel your tech design background let itself felt into your rendering and coloring the car. It reminds me of something robotic with 2 eyes and a couple of wings."
Yeah, I think, yeah, tech background probably attracts me to machinery. I do a lot of machinery, old abandoned machinery. Those headlamps were not planned, it was random. And the color that was inside, that they were, you know, obviously blown out vacant headlights with no glass and no bulbs because it's so old. That effect inside those was just completely random, and I just loved the way it turned out. And I was gonna fix it, quote unquote, and that's one thing about watercolors. You got to stop yourself from fixing it. Stop before you think it's done. That's always the secret, and it's so hard to do. But that was one successful example of me stopping myself. Those headlights on that car.
That's great. And Esme again, Danvic, "This is a huge move into abstraction and symbolism. Beautiful work. It reminds me of stained glass, but the dark carved lines do not extrude like the lead in a stained glass." That's really interesting. It does definitely have that kind of feel, but yeah, but I like the carving. Like Esme says, it doesn't look so much like a barrier, you know, like it's holding things in like lead in a stained glass. It's a little bit more inviting somehow.
Thank you.
Esme again with the great comments and questions. "Vincent, your photography makes me want to learn more about that person. Also, the photos are black and white, but the textures want to be acknowledged. Awesome work."
Thank you.
Yeah, no, your pieces do have such it's very rich, you know, as Tim I think was mentioning earlier about your values, you know, you can really feel everything that's happening in those spaces.
Well, you know, it took a long time, like for me to start with a raw file and then build up to it. And I would have to come back to it multiple times to adjust particular layers and things like that, just so that all of the details are there. And it doesn't just take, you know, a few minutes or whatever. Sometimes it takes months, you know, from me coming back to an image, because I cannot work on an image and then say it's done at one time. I have to keep coming back to it with fresh eyes all the time. Until that happens, the image is not done yet, so.
Yeah, no, as you guys were saying earlier, there's such intention in all of these works on display. And there's a great push and pull between that intention and between the spontaneity of Tim just doing his pores and Vincent what you're going to see and encounter while you have your camera out, and Danvic with your various layers and how they're going to interact. There's a really great play there between control and just letting things happen, but there's still an intent even when you're just kind of letting the medium or the subjects just happen and exist. There's still definitely that strong intent and vision in all of your pieces as artists. Your point of view definitely comes through. So I think that's been about an hour. I think that's been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Vincent Chan, Danvic Briones, Tim Bennison, for being here tonight and sharing your insights and your process and your inspirations with all of us here watching. And thank you so much for sharing your amazing artwork with us. Again, the West Van Arts Council, we are pleased to partner with the Meek Arts Center to present here, featuring these 3 amazing artists on from now until April 10th. Please go check it out. It's a fantastic show. There's so much to get lost in and connect with these artists. And thank you everyone watching who came out to support these talented artists and had great questions and awesome supportive comments. And if you want to see a little bit more or learn a bit more about these artists, there's links to their websites in the description below this video. So thanks again, everyone, for spending your evening with us. And thank you to these amazing artists for being here and sharing your work. It was a great night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen.
I hope everyone has a fantastic evening, and please definitely come check out here at the Meek Arts Center. Good night, everyone. Awesome. Great. Well,